Max Verstappen and Red Bull are incredibly slow, and Mercedes, especially in the hands of Russell, are so quick. And McLaren, despite having the same engine as Mercedes, is not as quick, with Ferrari being clearly the second fastest car, creating an amazing sprint to watch. Let's go through the sprint race really quickly. So George Russell won the race, but it wasn't easy. There were a lot of laps where it was really exchanging the lead between Hamilton and Russell, and we saw some amazing racing. It is great to see Hamilton back. There was a lot of moves around the outside. There was a lot of moves down the inside. I'm not sure how much of that is just credit to the yo-yoing effect, where one driver basically deploys all their battery by pressing the boost button down one straight, which means that they are compromised for the next straight, which means they get overtaken again. We saw this happen quite a lot, and I think what happened was that the Ferrari tires degraded faster than the Mercedes tires, which meant that at some point Mercedes was able to just breeze by without wasting a lot of battery and without giving a chance for Lewis Hamilton to come back at him again. And this is just credit to prove that the Mercedes is not only good because it has a good engine, but really because the chassis and the aerodynamics, and especially in the hands of someone so consistent like George Russell, can really perform very well. I saw a stat today that Russell was basically leading every single competitive session until the sprint, which was just incredible to see. The Ferraris look good, but I think they need improvements, especially in tire deg, especially in the chassis and aerodynamics area. The McLarens have really been running around as if they're in low power mode. But before we get into McLaren, it would be really great if you could like the video and subscribe if you want more of this kind of content. And if not, just leave a comment in what we can improve and how we could do better. So, McLaren, Lando finished the sprint race in P4. The McLaren has clearly improved compared to where it was in Melbourne. I think everyone was looking at how big of a delta there was to Mercedes, even though it's the same engine, and they have really understood, but it really felt that the McLaren was kind of held back. It never looked very competitive. It didn't look particularly close to the Ferrari, so clearly there is still quite a big gap between the Ferrari, which is assumed to be the second fastest car, and the McLaren, assumed to be the third fastest car, and it is nowhere near. It is so far ahead of where Red Bull is. Red Bull have been having an abysmal weekend between the sprint and the qualifying session, and even the sprint qualifying session they had yesterday. Red Bull are really in trouble, and it is not engine. Max Verstappen has been complaining throughout the whole weekend of a general loss of grip. He does not have the grip to go through the corners. Especially in qualifying, there was one lap where we managed to go on board in the broadcast, and you could see Max Verstappen struggling in every corner. It is ridiculous how bad it is, and I think losing Adrian Newey and losing all those people, we've been talking about this throughout the whole season. How do those exits affect a team such as Red Bull? And clearly we can see that the team is struggling on the aerodynamics and the chassis side, and the engine is the part that actually looks good, despite the fact that everyone was concerned about the engine at the start of the year. Kimi Antonelli also had quite an unassuming sprint. He had a lot of mistakes. He crashed into Hadjar at the beginning of the race. That was not good for him. He got a time penalty and he finished the sprint race in 5th. Now, if we go into qualifying, in qualifying, we saw the most bizarre thing ever. For the first time this season, so that's including testing, including the preseason tests, the shakedowns, and Melbourne, we saw a reliability issue. It's a small issue for George Russell, who just stopped on track in Q3. He did not move, and then all of a sudden managed to restart his car. That's great. Couldn't even change gears, managed to turn around the whole track in first gear. For Mercedes to just do a software restart, change the steering wheel, and he's back out there putting a lap in P2. How reliable is this Mercedes for them to have an engine problem that is solved by a software update and a change in the steering wheel? It is incredible, the performance that Mercedes was able to get out of the car, and kudos to everyone who works at Mercedes, and especially kudos to George Russell. But the main highlight of qualifying was now we have the youngest ever pole sitter in the history of F1 taking the record from Sebastian Vettel. Kimi Antonelli is now a pole sitter in F1. Incredible, really good to see for him. I really hope that Antonelli brings it this year and actually provides competition for George. Otherwise, it is going to be a pretty boring season. Behind the Mercedes, we have the two Ferraris. Actually kind of good. The gap to Mercedes is a lot smaller now than the 7/10 that we had. We had a theory last weekend that Ferrari did not really maximize what was going on in qualifying, and I think now this is proven. The two McLarens behind as well, another smaller gap there. But Red Bull, again, they are nowhere near the pace that is needed. The car looks completely undrivable to the point that Gasly in the Alpine actually is faster than Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. And this is to no one's surprise. The power unit in that Alpine is clearly working. Mercedes have clearly developed the class of the field power unit, and it's only time to see Williams as well coming up to be in that group. But Williams, of course, have been having a horrible start of the season as it goes through. Just do a quick rundown of all the other teams. Audi looked great. Nico Hülkenberg and Gabi actually looked fantastic, both making it into SQ2. I was always surprised. There were moments where we'd see Hülkenberg the second fastest in a session. That was always so impressive to see. I think that team has a lot of potential. I think it does really good for the name of Audi and the brand of Audi in the sport. Haas, clearly, I think, in my opinion, the fifth fastest team, so the best of the rest, just behind the Red Bull, both in terms of performance of the both cars. And this is mainly because Alpine has Gasly, who's doing really well, but Colapinto isn't. Colapinto did have a small incident in his qualifying sessions, and we actually saw a really nice moment between Colapinto and Flavio Briatore during the session. So it is quite nice. I think there is improvement there. But of course, we're not surprised. The bottom two teams are Aston Martin and Cadillac. And actually, quite interesting, Bottas was faster than Lance Stroll in the Aston. I always find this really fascinating to see how quick drivers like Bottas are in clearly new teams like Cadillac. So that's been it. This is On the Couch. It is not me and Julia anymore. She's out today. So hopefully tomorrow we'll both be back. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Again, if you liked it, press like, subscribe. Let us know what you think, and see you next time.